The modern world does not ask for your attention. It demands it with the predatory precision of a machine designed to never sleep. Every notification is a jagged tear in the fabric of your concentration, a digital hook pulling you away from the present moment and into a frantic, shimmering void. We live in a state of perpetual interruption, where the average human mind is treated as a harvestable resource for the highest bidder. This is the noise of the algorithm, a cacophony of voices that are not your own, echoing in a chamber you didn't realize you were locked inside. To hear your own thoughts again, you must first find a place where the noise cannot follow, a sanctuary carved out of the digital chaos. In the 4th century, men and women fled the crumbling structures of the Roman Empire not out of fear, but out of a desperate need for clarity. They wandered into the Egyptian cities, a landscape of brutal heat and absolute, deafening silence, seeking a life that was stripped of every unnecessary ornament. They were the pioneers of the interior life, recognizing that the distractions of the city were merely a veil pulled over the eyes of the soul. By entering the desert, they were not escaping reality, but were instead plunging headlong into the most terrifying reality of all, the unfiltered self. To embark on this journey with the elevated within is to accept a similar vocation, turning your back on the trivial to face the monumental. This ancient movement was defined by a single, radical act known as anachoresis. It is a word that translates to withdrawal or retirement, but it carries the weight of a strategic retreat in the middle of a losing war. The monk did not go to the desert because he hated the world, but because he realized he could no longer see the world clearly while he was being swallowed by its demands. He understood that the mind is like a pool of water that can only reflect the sky when it is perfectly still. In our current era, that pool is being constantly pelted by a hailstorm of data, leaving the surface so shattered that we have forgotten what the sky even looks like. Social media has transformed the human psyche into a crowded marketplace where every inch of floor space is occupied by a merchant screaming for your coin. Your thoughts are no longer your own. They are the products of 1,000 different influencers, politicians, and brands all vying for a momentary seat at the table of your consciousness. This constant influx of external stimuli creates a mental congestion that prevents deep thought from ever taking root. We have become a society of skimmers, gliding over the surface of 1,000 different topics without ever diving into the depths of a single one. The consequence of this is a profound spiritual and intellectual malnutrition, where we are overwhelmed with information but starving for wisdom. The desert monks knew that the only way to clear the marketplace was to walk away from it entirely, even if only for a season. They recognized that the environment shapes the soul, and a soul trapped in a circus will eventually become a performer. By choosing the barrenness of the desert, they forced themselves to confront the emptiness they had been trying to fill with the noise of society. We do the same today when we reach for our phones at the first sign of a quiet moment, terrified of what we might hear if the music stops. The digital world is our shield against the self, a way to ensure we are never truly alone with the person we have become. To reclaim your focus, you must be willing to endure the great withdrawal, a deliberate severance from the umbilical cord of the internet. This is not a mere vacation or a temporary break, but a 30-day experiment in digital asceticism designed to starve the false self. During this time, the goal is to create a vacuum where the algorithm once resided, allowing the natural rhythms of your mind to reemerge. It is a period of intense confrontation, where the boredom you have spent years avoiding will finally catch up to you. You will find that without the constant validation of the like button, your sense of worth begins to tremble as it searches for a new, internal foundation. Imagine the transition from a city street at midnight, flashing with neon lights and the roar of engines, to the vast, unmoving expanse of the Sahara. The silence there is not the absence of sound, but a presence so heavy it feels like a physical weight against your chest. This is the weight of your own existence, unadorned and unmediated by a screen. In the desert, there are no mirrors other than the one you carry inside you, and there are no audiences to perform for. You are forced to exist in the raw, uncomfortable present, where time is measured by the movement of the sun rather than the refresh rate of a feed. The 30-day digital desert is a challenge to stop being a consumer of other people's lives and start being the architect of your own. It requires a ruthless pruning of every digital habit that does not serve a direct, essential purpose in your physical reality. You are stripping away the layers of digital noise until only the essential remains, discovering that much of what you thought was vital was actually just a burden. This process is painful because it reveals how much of our identity is tied up in things that do not actually exist outside of a server farm. We have built cathedrals of glass and light, only to find that they provide no shelter when the storm of life truly hits. By stepping into this digital wilderness, you are following in the footsteps of those who knew that the mind is the ultimate battlefield. The monks of the Ascetes did not fear the lions of the desert as much as they feared the wandering thoughts that pulled them away from their center. They developed techniques to guard their focus with the same intensity that a soldier guards a fortress, knowing that a single lapse in attention could lead to spiritual ruin. We are currently living in a state of total surrender, allowing our focus to be kidnapped 100 times a day by entities that do not have our best interests at heart. The digital desert is the first step in a counteroffensive to take back the territory of your own mind. This withdrawal is the necessary precursor to any real transformation, for you cannot fix a machine while it is still running at 1,000 miles per hour. You must bring the engine to a halt, let the heat dissipate, and examine the gears with a steady hand. The silence of the desert provides the coolness needed for this examination, offering a perspective that is impossible to find while you are still plugged into the grid. As you move through these 30 days, the initial anxiety will give way to a strange, luminous clarity. You will begin to notice things that were previously invisible: the texture of the air, the nuances of your own emotions, and the slow, steady pulse of a world that does not need a Wi-Fi connection to be beautiful. The heat of the desert sun does more than bake the earth. It eventually reaches a point where it seems to suspend time itself, pinning the traveler to the ground under a weight of light. This was the hour the desert fathers feared most, the long stretch of the afternoon when the shadows vanish and the horizon becomes a shimmering, unreachable promise. They gave this experience a name that has largely been forgotten by the modern world, yet it describes our current psychological state with terrifying accuracy. They called it Acedia, the noonday devil, a spirit of restlessness that makes the monk feel as though the sun has stopped moving and the day is 50 hours long. It is a specific type of spiritual exhaustion that manifests not as a desire to sleep, but as a frantic, desperate need to be anywhere else but where you are. In the silence of the 4th century Cetes, Acedia would descend like a thick fog, making the walls of the cell feel like they were closing in. The monk would look at his books with loathing and find his heart growing cold toward his prayers and his purpose. He would find himself constantly looking out the window, hoping for a visitor or any small disruption that might break the suffocating stillness of the present moment. This is the exact sensation you experience when you have been away from your screen for more than 10 minutes. It is that itchy, anxious vibration in the back of your skull that insists there is something more important happening somewhere else, on someone else's feed. This modern acedia is the primary tool the digital world uses to keep you enslaved to the machine. It thrives on the gap between actions, colonizing the quiet moments of your life before they have a chance to turn into deep thought. When you're standing in a line or waiting for a kettle to boil, the noonday devil whispers that this time is being wasted. It convinces you that the silence is a void that must be filled, rather than a space where your soul can finally breathe. We have become so conditioned to this constant input that the absence of a notification feels like a personal affront, a signal that we have been forgotten by the world. The desert monks recognized that the only way to defeat this demon was through the practice of staying in the cell. They had a saying that if you stay in your cell will teach you everything you need to know. This sounds like a recipe for madness to the modern ear, which is trained to believe that growth only comes through movement and the consumption of new information. But the cell is not a prison. It is a laboratory for the interior life where the distractions of the world are stripped away. By refusing to leave, the monk forced himself to confront the internal noise that he had been trying to escape through external wandering. You must create your own version of the cell in the midst of your digital life, a boundary that the noonday devil cannot cross. This is not just about putting the phone in another room, though that is a necessary physical beginning. It is about a mental commitment to the current task and the current location, regardless of how boring or repetitive it may seem. When you feel the urge to check your phone, you are experiencing the modern equivalent of the monk looking out his window for a distraction. You are attempting to flee the reality of your own existence, because that reality currently lacks the dopamine spikes you have been trained to crave. The most insidious manifestation of this restlessness is what we can identify as the twitch. It is the unconscious, physical movement of the hand reaching for a device, often before the mind has even registered a desire to do so. This twitch is a neurological reflex, a ghost in the machine of your biology that has been programmed by thousands of hours of scrolling. It happens when you hit a difficult sentence in a book or when a conversation lulls for a single second. The twitch is the body's attempt to bypass the discomfort of the present by jumping into the digital stream, where everything is fast and nothing requires sustained effort. To reclaim your focus, you must begin by naming the twitch every time it occurs, bringing the unconscious into the light of awareness. When you feel your fingers grazing the edge of your pocket or your eyes darting toward the glowing screen on the desk, stop and recognize it as a symptom of Acedia. Do not judge yourself for the impulse, but do not surrender to it either. By identifying the movement as the work of the noonday devil, you create a small gap of freedom between the impulse and the action. In that gap, you can choose to stay in your cell, remaining present with the discomfort rather than fleeing from it. The noonday devil wants you to believe that your boredom is a problem that needs to be solved with more information. It suggests that if you just find the right article, the right video, or the right thread, the feeling of emptiness will finally go away. But this is a lie designed to keep you in a state of perpetual consumption, moving from one digital mirage to the next without ever finding water. The truth is that boredom is the threshold of the sacred, the necessary gateway to the deeper layers of the mind. If you can endure the initial itch of acedia without reaching for a distraction, the restlessness eventually begins to subside, giving way to a different kind of clarity. Staying in the cell means learning to inhabit your own skin without the constant validation of an external audience. The Desert Fathers knew that the man who cannot sit alone in his room is a man who is at the mercy of every passing wind. When we reach for our phones, we are essentially admitting that we are not enough for ourselves, that we need a digital tether to feel real. The cell teaches you that your value is not dependent on your connectivity or your awareness of the latest trends. It reveals the sturdy, quiet foundation of your being that exists beneath the frantic surface of your digital persona. The practice of stability is a direct assault on the architecture of the modern internet, which is designed to keep you in a state of constant transit. Every link is an exit, every notification is an invitation to leave what you are doing and go somewhere else. This creates a fragmented consciousness, a mind that is spread so thin across 100 different tabs that it has no center. By staying in the cell, you are practicing a form of mental rebellion, refusing to be moved by the predatory algorithms that want to harvest your attention. You are asserting that your current moment is valuable enough to warrant your full, undivided presence. Think of the cell as a sanctuary where the laws of the algorithm do not apply. In this space, time is not a resource to be optimized or a void to be filled, but a medium in which you exist. When the noonday devil strikes, the weight of this time can feel unbearable, like a physical pressure against your chest. This is because you are finally feeling the actual scale of your life, unmediated by the artificial speed of the digital world. The anxiety you feel is not a sign that something is wrong, but a sign that your mind is beginning to detoxify from the frantic pace of the feed. The twitch is the final resistance of the old self, the part of you that is addicted to the shimmer of the screen. Every time you resist the twitch, you are strengthening the neural pathways of focus and weakening the grip of the midday demon. It is a slow, often painful process of rehabilitation, similar to the way a monk's body eventually adjusted to the rigors of the desert. You will find that the more you stay in your cell, the less the world outside seems to matter. The urgent news, the viral outrage, and the endless stream of updates begin to look like what they truly are: distant dust storms that have no power over your internal peace. The Desert Fathers often spoke of the cell as a furnace where the dross of the soul is burned away. In our context, the heat of that furnace is the boredom and the restlessness that we have spent our entire lives trying to avoid. When you sit with your acedia instead of scrolling it away, you are allowing that heat to do its work. You are burning off the need for constant stimulation and the fear of being alone with your own thoughts. What remains after the fire has done its work is a focus that is tempered and resilient, capable of engaging with the world without being consumed by it. This is the secret that the noonday devil tries to hide. The most profound discoveries are not found in the infinite expanse of the internet, but in the small, quiet corners of the present. The monk who stayed in his cell eventually found that the entire universe was contained within its four walls. When you stop fleeing the present, you begin to notice the intricate beauty of the reality you actually inhabit. You see the way the light moves across the floor, the subtle shifts in your own mood, and the depth of the ideas that have been waiting for you to be still enough to hear them. The cell is the only place where you can truly encounter yourself, because it is the only place where there are no mirrors. In the digital world, we are constantly seeing reflections of ourselves in the form of profiles, likes, and comments. This creates a hall of mirrors that makes it impossible to see who we are when no one is watching. By staying in the cell and identifying the twitch, you are stepping out of the hall of mirrors and into the raw, unvarnished truth of your own existence. It is a terrifying transition, but it is the only one that leads to genuine freedom. You will find that the midday demon is most active when you are on the verge of a breakthrough. Just as the monk was most tempted to leave his cell when his prayer was about to become deep, you will feel the strongest urge to check your phone when you are close to a significant insight. The twitch is a defense mechanism of the superficial mind, an attempt to pull you back to the surface before you dive too deep. Recognizing this allows you to use the intensity of the restlessness as a compass. The more you want to reach for the phone, the more important it is that you stay exactly where you are. The actionable path forward is a ruthless observation of your own body. For the next several days, your primary task is not to change your habits, but to map them with the precision of a desert scout. Every time you feel that phantom vibration in your pocket, name it. Every time your hand moves toward the mouse to open a new tab, name it. By calling out the noonday devil by name, you are asserting your role as the master of your own house. You are no longer a passive observer of your own compulsions, but a conscious gatekeeper of your own focus. This stability of place is the foundation upon which all other ascetic practices are built. Without the ability to stay in the cell, you will always be a nomad in the digital wilderness, wandering from one distraction to another in a state of perpetual hunger. The Desert Fathers knew that the soul cannot grow if it is always on the move. It needs the stillness of the cell to take root and the heat of the noonday sun to mature. By embracing the boredom and naming the twitch, you are planting yourself in the fertile soil of the present moment, where real transformation becomes possible. As you move through this phase of the digital desert, do not be surprised if the world begins to feel strange and unfamiliar. The colors may seem more vivid, the silence more profound, and the passage of time more deliberate. This is not because the world has changed, but because you are finally seeing it without the distorting lens of a screen. You are waking up from a long digital slumber and finding that the reality you abandoned is more beautiful and more challenging than anything the algorithm could ever provide. The cell is no longer a prison. It is the place where you have finally decided to live. The noonday devil will return, for he is a persistent enemy who does not give up his territory easily. There will be days when the cell feels small and the twitch feels like an irresistible force. In those moments, remember that every second you spend in the stillness is a victory for your soul. You are reclaiming the territory of your mind, one quiet minute at a time. The restlessness is merely the sound of the old world dying, making way for a new, more focused way of being that does not require a signal to be strong. The monk in his cell eventually realizes that the walls are not the true boundary of his world. He discovers that the real frontier is the thin, invisible line where a thought first enters the consciousness. This is the realm of Nepsis, a state of spiritual sobriety that functions as a permanent guard against the intoxication of the world. To the Desert Fathers, a mind without Nepsis was like a house without a door, allowing every passing beggar or thief to wander in and make themselves at home. We live in a state of chronic mental drunkenness, stumbling from one digital stimulus to the next without ever questioning who or what is actually steering our attention. Nepsis requires you to become a sentry standing at the gate of your own heart. It is the active, unwavering watchfulness that scrutinizes every impulse before it is allowed to settle and take root. In the modern world, we have outsourced this gatekeeping to algorithms that are designed to bypass our defenses rather than strengthen them. We have become passive recipients of a deluge of data, losing the ability to distinguish between a thought that is our own and a thought that has been planted by a marketing department. Reclaiming your focus begins with the terrifying realization that most of what you think you are choosing is actually being chosen for you. This ancient practice finds its modern resonance in the concept of metacognition, the ability to think about your own thinking. It is the capacity to step back from the stream of your impulses and observe them as if they were external objects. When you feel the sudden, sharp urge to check your phone while in the middle of a deep task, Nepsis is the force that allows you to see the urge without immediately obeying it. It creates a split second of awareness where you are no longer the slave to the impulse, but the master of the threshold. Without this gap of metacognition, you are merely a biological machine responding to digital cues. The desert monks believed that the senses were the windows of the soul, and that if these windows were left unguarded, the interior light would eventually be extinguished. They were particularly wary of the eyes, which they saw as the most direct path for distraction to enter the heart. In our era, the eyes are being constantly assaulted by a kaleidoscopic array of high-definition bait designed to trigger our most primal instincts. We have forgotten how to guard our sight, allowing the screen to pour its chaotic contents directly into our subconscious. To practice Nepsis today is to recognize that what you look at is what you eventually become. The monks spoke of a specific kind of gluttony they called gastromargia, which we usually associate with the overindulgence of the stomach. However, they understood that the soul has its own mouth and its own hunger, which can be just as easily corrupted by excess. Scrolling through an infinite feed is a form of visual gastromargia, a frantic gorging on images and fragments of information that provide no actual nourishment. We consume thousands of faces, headlines, and aesthetic snapshots in a single sitting, leaving the mind bloated and heavy with a strange digital lethargy. This gluttony of the eyes creates a spiritual obesity where the soul becomes too weighted down by the trivial to ever ascend toward the meaningful. This visual gluttony is particularly insidious because it masquerades as a search for connection or knowledge. We tell ourselves we are staying informed or keeping in touch, but the reality is that we are simply feeding an addiction to the novelty of the next image. The infinite scroll is a banquet of ghosts, offering the appearance of substance while leaving the consumer more hollow than before. Every flick of the thumb is a bite of a meal that never ends and never satisfies. To break this cycle, you must begin to treat your visual input with the same discipline that an ascetic treats his diet. Nepsis is not a passive state of relaxation, but a rigorous, athletic discipline of the mind. The monks compared the watchful mind to a cat waiting at a mouse hole, poised and perfectly still, ready to pounce the moment a thought emerges. This level of intensity is necessary because the digital world is designed to slip past your awareness in the most subtle ways possible. A notification is not just a sound. It is an invitation to abandon your post and let the enemy through the gates. If you are not actively watching the threshold, the gates are already wide open. The goal of this watchfulness is to achieve a state of prasach, or total attention to the present moment. Prasach is the fruit of Nepsis, a clarity of mind that allows you to see reality as it truly is, unclouded by the smog of digital distraction. When you are in a state of prasach, the lure of the screen loses its power because you are fully occupied by the richness of the here and now. The algorithm thrives on your absence, feeding on the parts of you that are not fully present in your own life. By practicing watchfulness, you are reclaiming the territory of your existence from those who wish to colonize it. To implement this practice in the digital age, you must establish a protocol for every interaction with your devices. The most effective way to re-establish the gatekeeper is through the implementation of the 3-breath rule. Before you open any app that utilizes an infinite scroll or a notification feed, you must stop and take 3 deliberate, conscious breaths. This is not a breathing exercise for relaxation, but a liturgical pause designed to re-engage the prefrontal cortex. It is the moment where the sentry steps forward and asks the impulse for its credentials. During these 3 breaths, you are forcing the mind to shift from an automatic, reactive state to a conscious, evaluative state. You are asking yourself why you are reaching for the device and what you hope to find inside the digital void. Often, the mere act of pausing for 3 breaths is enough to dissolve the compulsion entirely, revealing it as a hollow reflex. It breaks the circuit of the twitch and gives you the opportunity to choose a different path. This is the modern application of Nepsis, a deliberate slowing down of the soul's machinery to prevent it from spinning out of control. If, after the 3 breaths, you still decide to enter the digital space, you do so as a visitor rather than a victim. You enter with a specific purpose and a predetermined exit strategy, keeping the gatekeeper alert throughout the entire duration of the session. You watch the way your body reacts to the images on the screen, noting the rise of envy, anger, or vanity as they occur. By maintaining this level of watchfulness, you prevent the digital input from sinking into the deeper layers of your heart. You are using the tool without allowing the tool to use you. The 3-breath rule is a small act of defiance that carries immense spiritual weight. It is a declaration that your attention is not a commodity to be traded, but a sacred gift to be guarded. Each time you successfully pause, you are strengthening the muscle of Nepsis and weakening the grip of the algorithm. You are teaching your brain that there is a space between the stimulus and the response, and that in that space lies your freedom. Over time, this practice transforms the way you interact with the entire world, not just your phone. Watchfulness also involves a ruthless pruning of the sensory environment to reduce the burden on the gatekeeper. The desert monks did not just watch their thoughts, they actively removed the things that triggered the wrong ones. In your digital life, this means silencing the cacophony of unnecessary notifications and clearing the clutter from your home screen. Every red dot is a direct attack on your Nepsis, a siren song designed to lure the sentry away from his post. By simplifying your digital landscape, you are making the work of the gatekeeper significantly easier and more effective. We must also recognize that the gatekeeper can become exhausted if he is forced to fight too many battles at once. This is why the monks emphasize the importance of physical environment and routine to support the work of the mind. If your phone is the first thing you see in the morning and the last thing you see at night, you are placing an impossible burden on your watchfulness. You are essentially asking the sentry to fight a war while he is still trying to wake up or fall asleep. A true practitioner of Nepsis creates physical boundaries that protect the mind during its most vulnerable hours. The struggle for watchfulness is a lifelong endeavor, a constant recalibration of the soul toward the light of awareness. There will be moments when the sentry falls asleep and the thieves of distraction pillage the treasury of your focus. In those moments, the practice is not to despair, but to simply return to the gate and begin the watch again. The Desert Fathers were deeply compassionate toward the reality of human weakness, knowing that the path to sobriety is paved with 1,000 small failures. What matters is the persistent, daily commitment to the art of being awake. As you refine your Nepsis, you will begin to notice the subtle textures of your own consciousness that were previously obscured by the noise. You will see the way a single post can shift your mood for hours, and you will learn to catch that shift before it takes hold. You will become aware of the physical sensation of your attention being pulled, a feeling like a magnetic tug at the center of your forehead. This awareness is the beginning of true sovereignty, the moment when you realize that you are the one who decides where your life force is directed. The digital world loses its magic when you see the gears and levers that make it work. The art of watchfulness eventually leads to a state of inner stillness that is not easily disturbed by external events. When the gatekeeper is strong, the marketplace of the world can scream as loud as it wants, but it cannot enter the sanctuary of your heart without your permission. You become like a rock in the middle of a rushing stream, where the water flows around you without moving you from your place. This is the ultimate goal of the digital ascetic, to live in the world of information without being drowned by it. You are no longer a leaf blown by the wind of every viral trend, but a rooted tree that grows according to its own internal law. This watchfulness also extends to the way we use our own voices in the digital sphere. We begin to watch the impulse to post, to comment, and to perform, recognizing these as further attempts to escape the silence of the self. Nepsis teaches us to question the source of our need to be seen and heard by a faceless crowd. We start to realize that much of our digital expression is just another form of restlessness, a way to avoid the hard work of being truly present with ourselves. By watching the impulse to speak, we rediscover the power and the dignity of silence. The three-breath rule is the gateway to this deeper silence, a simple tool that opens the door to a more profound way of being. It is the first step in the long journey from the frantic surface of the digital world to the quiet depths of the interior life. Each breath is a reminder of your humanity, a physical anchor that pulls you out of the abstract void and back into your own body. In that moment of pause, the entire structure of the attention economy begins to crumble, because it cannot survive a mind that refuses to be rushed. You are reclaiming your time, your focus, and ultimately, your soul. The sentry at the gate does not just keep the bad things out, he also ensures that the good things are preserved within. By practicing Nepsis, you are creating a protected space where deep thought, creativity, and prayer can finally flourish. You are building a fortress for your focus, a sanctuary where the most important parts of your being can grow without fear of interruption. The digital desert is not just a place of deprivation, but a place of intense, focused life. It is the only place where you can finally hear the whisper of your own calling over the roar of the machine. Once the sentry is at the gate and the three-breath pause has been established, the work of the digital monk shifts from general watchfulness to specific discernment. It is not enough to know that an intruder is trying to enter. You must learn to identify the specific nature of the thought that is knocking at the door of your consciousness. In the 4th century, the master psychologist of the desert, Evagrius Ponticus, mapped the human psyche with a precision that predates modern neurology by over a millennium. He identified 8 specific patterns of intrusive thoughts, which he called the Logismoi, representing the primary ways the soul is pulled away from its center and into a state of fragmentation. These were not merely sins in a moralistic sense, but psychological demons that functioned as suggestions, whispering to the monk and enticing him to abandon his focus for a phantom reality. In the digital landscape, these 8 thoughts have been codified into the very architecture of the platforms we use, turning the ancient struggle of the monk into the daily experience of the smartphone user. The algorithm is not a neutral tool. It is a sophisticated delivery system for the Logismoi, designed to trigger the very impulses that Evagrius warned would lead to the disintegration of the self. To reclaim your focus, you must learn to see the code behind the content, identifying which of the 8 thoughts is being activated by the feed in front of you. This is the art of diagnostic awareness, where you stop being a consumer of information and start being an observer of your own internal reactions. By naming the demon that is currently driving your thumb to scroll, you strip it of its invisibility and, consequently, its power. The first of these thoughts is gluttony, which in the digital desert manifests as the insatiable hunger for information and novelty. We are no longer stuffing our stomachs with excess food, but stuffing our minds with a never-ending buffet of headlines, trivia, and short-form videos that we can never hope to digest. This information gluttony leaves the mind heavy and sluggish, incapable of the lean, athletic focus required for deep work or contemplation. You feel the weight of this thought when you find yourself clicking on one more link despite feeling mentally bloated and exhausted. It is the drive to consume for the sake of consumption, a frantic attempt to fill an internal void with a constant stream of external data. Following closely is the thought of lust, which the digital world has refined into a pervasive hyperstimulation that extends far beyond the sexual. It is the transformation of everything into an object of immediate, fleeting desire, where the eyes are trained to hunt for the next visual spike. We see this in the way content is engineered to be visually arresting, using colors, movements, and faces to bypass our rational minds and trigger our primal instincts. This digital lust creates a state of perpetual wanting, where the present moment is always insufficient compared to the shimmering promise of the next image. It conditions the soul to be a hunter of sensations, forever chasing a satisfaction that the screen can never truly provide. Avarice, or greed, manifests in the digital realm as the compulsive hoarding of information and the accumulation of digital status. We save articles we will never read, bookmark videos we will never watch, and obsessively track our follower counts as if they were gold coins in a treasury. This is the thought that tells you that your worth is tied to the size of your digital footprint and the amount of data you have successfully captured. It creates a spirit of scarcity, where you feel you must constantly acquire more digital territory to feel secure. In reality, this hoarding only adds to the clutter of the mind, creating a dense thicket of unfinished business that chokes out the possibility of stillness. The thought of sadness in the Evagrian system is often a reaction to the failure of the previous three. It is the heavy, gray lethargy that follows a period of overindulgence. In our context, this is the post-scroll depression, the profound sense of emptiness that settles over you after you have spent hours in the digital void. It is the realization that the time you have spent consuming has yielded nothing of lasting value, leaving you more alone than when you began. This sadness is not a sign of a broken brain, but a healthy soul mourning the loss of its own attention. The algorithm attempts to cure this sadness with more distraction, creating a feedback loop that leads deeper into the fog of digital despair. Anger is perhaps the most visible of the Logismoi in the modern era, fueling the outrage cycles that dominate our social feeds. The digital world is designed to keep you in a state of constant, low-level irritation, presenting you with endless opportunities for indignation and conflict. We are encouraged to react instantly to the perceived slights and errors of strangers, turning our focus into a weapon of judgment. This anger is a fire that consumes the energy of the soul, leaving behind only the ash of bitterness and exhaustion. When you feel the urge to leave a scathing comment or engage in a digital argument, you are being driven by a thought that seeks to destroy your peace for the sake of a momentary feeling of superiority. Acedia, which we have already identified as the noonday devil, is the sixth thought, a spiritual restlessness that makes the present moment feel like a prison. It is the desire to be anywhere else but here, to do anything else but the task at hand, which drives the constant switching between apps and tabs. Evagrius described it as a weariness of the soul, a state where the mind becomes like a wandering animal that can find no place to rest. In the digital age, Acedia is the default state of the human psyche, a chronic inability to inhabit the now without the mediation of a device. It is the force that makes the silence of the desert feel unbearable, pushing us back toward the noise of the city. Vainglory is the seventh thought, and it is the primary engine of the social media economy, centered on the hunt for validation and the curation of a false self. It is the thought that tells you that your life only has value if it is witnessed, liked, and shared by an audience of digital observers. This drive for vainglory turns every moment of your life into a potential performance, forcing you to constantly view your own experiences through the eyes of others. You stop living your life and start managing a brand, a process that requires a continuous sacrifice of your authentic self on the altar of public opinion. The notification bell is the liturgy of vainglory, a repetitive signal that your performance has been noticed and approved. Finally, there is the thought of pride, the most dangerous of the Logismoi because it is the most subtle and self-deceiving. In the digital world, pride manifests as the absolute certainty of our own rightness, reinforced by the echo chambers and personalized feeds that tell us exactly what we want to hear. It is the belief that we have the full picture, that our perspective is the only one that matters, and that those who disagree are not just wrong, but inferior. This pride closes the mind to the possibility of learning and growth, creating a rigid, brittle identity that is incapable of true connection. It is the ultimate isolation, where the self becomes its own god, worshipped in a temple of personalized algorithms. To begin the practice of discernment, you must learn to pause at the moment of the twitch and ask, which of the 8 is speaking to me right now? This is not a rhetorical question, but a tactical diagnostic tool that requires total honesty with oneself. If you are reaching for your phone because you feel a sense of lack and need to see a beautiful image, recognize it as lust. If you are checking your notifications to see if a post has been liked, name it as vainglory. If you are scrolling through a political thread to find something to be angry about, identify it as anger. This act of naming is the first step in breaking the hypnotic spell of the algorithm, as it shifts the focus from the content of the screen to the state of the heart. The desert monks were masters of this internal mapping, knowing that a thought identified is a thought that has lost its power to deceive. When you label a thought as a logismos, you are creating a distance between your true self and the impulse, recognizing that you are not your thoughts. You are the observer of the thoughts, the sentry at the gate who has the authority to deny them entry. In the digital age, we have been conditioned to believe that every impulse we feel is a true expression of our identity. But the practice of discernment reveals that many of our impulses are merely the results of external manipulation. You are reclaiming your sovereignty by deciding which thoughts are worthy of your attention and which are merely the whispers of the noonday devil. This diagnostic work must be grounded in a physical practice, as the mind is often too quick and too slippery to be caught by thought alone. The actionable step for this stage of the journey is the implementation of an emotional audit, a simple but profound journaling exercise that tracks the state of the soul before and after digital engagement. For the next 7 days, you are required to keep a small notebook or a single sheet of paper near your primary devices. Before you engage with any social media or news platform, you must write down a single word describing your current emotional state and the specific logismos that is driving the urge to check. Perhaps you feel bored, which is the precursor to Acedia, or perhaps you feel insecure, which is the root of vainglory. By writing it down, you are making the unconscious conscious, forcing the hidden demon to step into the light of the page. Once you have finished your digital session, whether it lasted 5 minutes or an hour, you must immediately write down your emotional state again. Notice the shift that has occurred during the time you spent plugged into the grid. Do you feel more energized, or do you feel the heavy, gray fog of sadness? Do you feel more connected to the world, or do you feel the sharp, jagged edges of anger and envy? This before and after audit provides the raw data necessary to understand how the digital world is actually affecting your psyche, stripping away the illusions we tell ourselves about why we use these platforms. You will begin to see patterns emerge, realizing that your digital habits are often a form of self-medication that only makes the underlying symptoms worse. You might discover that you reach for the news when you feel powerless, only to find that the news leaves you feeling even more angry and diminished. You might see that you seek validation through likes when you feel lonely, only to find that the lack of engagement leaves you feeling more isolated than before. The journal becomes a mirror that reflects the true cost of your digital life, a cost that is measured not in dollars, but in the currency of your internal peace. This is the beginning of the great unraveling, where you start to see the strings that the algorithm uses to pull your heart in a dozen different directions. The Desert Fathers knew that you cannot fight an enemy you do not understand, and this audit is your intelligence report from the front lines of the battle for your mind. It is a humble, quiet practice that requires no special technology, yet it is more powerful than any app-blocking software or screen time limit. As you continue this practice, you will find that the mere knowledge of the audit begins to change your behavior. The sentry at the gate becomes more vigilant, knowing that he will have to account for every intruder he allows to pass. You may find yourself pausing with your hand over the device, realizing that the thought driving you is one of envy or avarice, and deciding that you do not want to feed that particular demon today. This is the birth of true freedom, the moment when the impulse no longer leads automatically to the action. You are developing the spiritual muscles of resistance, learning to stand firm in the face of the algorithm's predatory precision. The 8 thoughts are like seeds that the world tries to plant in the fertile soil of your attention. If you are not watchful, they will take root and grow into massive trees that block out the light of your own soul, leaving you in a permanent shadow of distraction. But if you catch the seed as it falls, identifying it for what it is, you can simply brush it away before it has a chance to sprout. This constant, daily maintenance of the interior landscape is the work of the digital monk, a task that is never finished but becomes easier with every passing day. You are clearing the ground for something new to grow, something that is not dictated by a server farm in a distant city. The audit also reveals the specific triggers that the digital world uses to activate the Logismoi within you. You might notice that certain accounts consistently trigger envy, or that certain topics always lead you into the trap of anger. This awareness allows you to practice a form of digital pruning, ruthlessly removing the sources of temptation that you are not yet strong enough to handle. The monk did not just fight the demons in his mind. He also simplified his environment to reduce the number of places they could hide. You are doing the same when you unfollow the accounts that feed your vainglory or silence the notifications that trigger your acedia. This is not a process of judgment or self-shame, but a process of liberation. You are not a bad person because you feel the pull of the Logismoi. You are a human being living in a world that has been engineered to exploit your psychological vulnerabilities. The Desert Fathers were deeply aware of the fragility of the human heart, and their system was designed to provide a path toward healing and wholeness. By naming the thoughts and tracking their effects, you are taking the first steps on that path, moving away from the fragmentation of the digital world and toward the integration of the self. You are learning to see the world as it is, rather than as the algorithm wants you to see it. The practice of discernment eventually leads to a state of transparency, where the movements of your own heart become clear and easy to read. You no longer have to wonder why you feel exhausted or irritable. You can trace the feeling back to the specific thought that you allowed to enter your mind an hour ago. This transparency is the foundation of true focus, as it allows you to quickly clear away the mental clutter that prevents you from engaging deeply with your life. You become a master of your internal environment, capable of maintaining your center even in the midst of a digital storm. As the days of the audit pass, you will find that the 8 thoughts lose their novelty and their charm. They begin to look like what they truly are: repetitive, predictable patterns that offer nothing but a temporary distraction from the work of being alive. The vainglory of a like becomes as hollow as a paper crown, and the anger of a digital argument becomes as futile as shouting at the wind. You start to crave the stillness that lies beneath the thoughts, the quiet place where the Logismoi cannot follow. This is the place where the real journey begins, the inner sanctum of the soul that has been reclaimed from the noise of the marketplace. The journal you keep is a testament to your struggle and your progress, a record of the moments when you chose focus over distraction and awareness over intoxication. It is a map of your own desert, showing the places where you were tempted and the places where you found the strength to stay in your cell. Keep it close to you, for it is a reminder that you are the architect of your own attention. The algorithm may be powerful, but it cannot survive the scrutiny of a mind that has learned to see through its illusions. You are no longer a harvestable resource. You are a living soul, awake and watchful in the digital wilderness. The weight of the Logismoi begins to lift as you realize that you do not have to believe everything you think. You can observe the thought of envy as it passes through your mind, acknowledging its presence without allowing it to take hold of your heart. You can feel the pull of Acedia and choose to remain in the present moment, trusting that the boredom will eventually give way to something deeper. This is the discipline of the interior life, a constant, gentle returning to the center every time the mind begins to wander. It is the work of a lifetime, but it begins with a single word written in a notebook. The Desert Fathers often said that the beginning of salvation is to see your own thoughts clearly. In our era, this clarity is the most radical act of rebellion possible, a direct threat to the systems that profit from our confusion and fragmentation. By mapping the 8 deadly thoughts of the algorithm, you are declaring that your mind is not for sale. You are reclaiming the territory of your consciousness, one named thought at a time, and building a fortress that the noonday devil cannot penetrate. The silence of the desert is no longer a place of fear, but a place of power where you can finally hear the voice of your own truth. This discernment is the necessary preparation for the deeper work of stillness that lies ahead. You cannot find the inner silence if you're still being tossed about by the waves of the Logismoi. You must first learn to navigate the waters of your own mind, identifying the currents and the storms before you can find the calm of the deep. The audit is your compass, and the 8 thoughts are your landmarks, guiding you through the digital chaos and toward the sanctuary of the self. You are moving closer to the heart of the desert, where the noise of the world finally fades away and the real work of transformation can begin. The practice of naming the Logismoi creates a psychological buffer between you and the digital world, a space where you can breathe and think for yourself. In this space, the predatory precision of the machine is neutralized by the simple, human act of awareness. You are no longer a target to be hit, but a person to be respected, starting with the respect you show for your own attention. The digital desert is not just a place of withdrawal, but a place of reclaiming, where you take back everything that the algorithm has stolen from you. You are becoming the master of the threshold, the sentry who knows exactly who is allowed to enter and who must be turned away. As you close your journal after a session of audit, feel the solidity of the physical world around you, the weight of the pen, the texture of the paper, the rhythm of your own breath. These are the things that are real, the anchors that pull you back from the shimmering void of the screen. The 8 thoughts will return, for they are as persistent as the desert wind, but they will find you ready. You have mapped the terrain, you have identified the enemy, and you have begun the long, slow process of reclaiming your focus. The journey continues, deeper into the stillness, where the only voice you will hear is your own. To reach the state of Hesychia is to enter the final chamber of the interior fortress, a place where the noise of the world is not merely muffled, but entirely irrelevant. The Desert Fathers understood that silence was not an empty void, but a dense and vibrant presence that required a specific kind of preparation to inhabit. This is the practice of hesychasm, a word that speaks to a stillness so profound that it reaches into the very marrow of the bones and the hidden corners of the heart. It is the deliberate ceasing from the production of mental images, a radical iconoclasm of the mind in an age that is obsessed with the visual. We are currently drowning in a sea of digital icons, each one a tiny hook designed to snag the attention and pull it away from the quiet center of being. The modern crisis of focus is, at its root, a crisis of the mental buffer, that essential space between stimulus and response where the soul does its most important work. We have systematically eliminated every natural gap in our day, treating the moments of waiting and transition as problems to be solved with a screen. When you reach for your phone in an elevator, a checkout line, or a quiet hallway, you are murdering the possibility of reflection before it can even draw its first breath. These small, seemingly insignificant windows of time are the lungs of the psyche, the moments when the subconscious sifts through the chaos of life and begins to find meaning. By filling them with the gray water of the internet, you are suffocating your own intuition and leaving your mind in a state of perpetual congestion. This constant influx of data creates a psychological thickening, a layer of digital silt that prevents the deeper insights of the self from rising to the surface. The hesychast knew that the mind must be stripped of its ornaments before it can see the truth, just as a mirror must be wiped clean of dust before it can reflect the light. Our digital ornaments are the notifications, the headlines, and the endless stream of images that we allow to colonize our internal landscape. We have become terrified of the gap, because the gap forces us to face the reality of our own existence without the buffer of a distraction. To reclaim your focus, you must learn to love the gap once again, seeing it not as a waste of time, but as a sanctuary of potential. The architecture of your day must be rebuilt to protect these sanctuaries, beginning with the most sacred thresholds of the morning and the evening. The first hour of the day is the womb of your consciousness, the time when the direction of your soul is set for the hours to follow. If the first thing you encounter upon waking is the frantic, demanding world of the digital feed, you have already surrendered your sovereignty before you have even left your bed. You are allowing the anxieties of the collective to dictate the rhythm of your heart, ensuring that your day will be one of reaction rather than action. The rule of the first hour demands an absolute embargo on all digital input, a 60-minute period where the only reality you acknowledge is the one you can touch, smell, and see with your own eyes. During this first hour, the goal is to inhabit the silence of the morning and allow the mind to orient itself to the physical world. This is the time for the slow movements of the body, the quiet observation of the light as it enters the room, and the gathering of the self for the work ahead. By refusing to plug into the grid, you are asserting that your internal life is more important than the external noise of the marketplace. You are giving your thoughts the space they need to emerge naturally, rather than being forced into the pre-existing molds of the algorithm. This is the foundation of Hesychia, a deliberate choice to start the day in a state of rest rather than a state of emergency. The final hour of the day is the mirror image of the first, the time when the soul prepares to descend into the mystery of sleep. When you end your day by scrolling through a feed, you are injecting a final dose of artificial stimulation into your psyche at the very moment it needs to be unwinding. The blue light of the screen is a chemical lie that tells your brain the sun is rising, disrupting the delicate hormonal balance that governs your rest and your recovery. More importantly, the content you consume in this final hour becomes the raw material for your dreams, the last seeds planted in the soil of your subconscious before the lights go out. To guard this threshold is to protect the quality of your rest and the integrity of your inner world. The rule of the last hour requires you to sever the umbilical cord of the internet at least 60 minutes before you intend to sleep. This is the time to close the books of the day, to put away the tools of labor, and to allow the mind to settle into a state of gentle withdrawal. It is a period of decompression where the events of the day are allowed to fade into the background, making room for the deep, restorative silence of the night. By honoring this boundary, you are creating a zone of safety around your sleep, ensuring that the noonday devil cannot follow you into the realm of rest. You are teaching your body and your mind that there is an end to the demands of the world, a place where you are finally allowed to just be. Beyond these thresholds of time, you must also create physical zones of silence within the geography of your daily life. A zone of silence is a specific place where technology is not merely discouraged, but strictly forbidden, a secular monastery carved out of the digital landscape. This could be your dining table, your bedroom, or a specific chair in the corner of a room that is dedicated solely to reflection and presence. By establishing these physical boundaries, you are training your brain to associate certain spaces with the absence of distraction. When you enter a zone of silence, the sentry at the gate of your mind can finally lower his guard, knowing that no digital intruders are allowed to cross the threshold. The dining table should be the first of these zones, reclaimed from the intrusion of the screen and restored as a place of absolute presence. When we eat while scrolling, we are committing a form of sensory fragmentation, dividing our attention between the physical act of nourishment and the digital act of consumption. This prevents us from fully experiencing the taste of our food, the rhythm of our breath, and the company of those who may be sitting across from us. A meal should be a liturgy of the senses, a time to be fully grounded in the material reality of the body. By banishing the device from the table, you are making a commitment to the sanctity of the present moment and the dignity of the physical act of living. The bedroom is the second vital zone of silence, a sanctuary for rest and intimacy that must be protected from the prying eyes of the algorithm. To bring a phone into the bedroom is to invite the entire world into your most private space, turning a place of refuge into a bustling station of the information economy. The presence of the device, even when it is silent, creates a subtle psychological tension, a tether to the world of work and social obligation that prevents total relaxation. By leaving your technology at the door, you are asserting that this space is for the soul and the body alone. You are creating a physical boundary that honors the necessity of withdrawal and the beauty of being unreachable. In these zones of silence, the practice of hesychasm begins to take root as you learn to endure the absence of external images. The initial experience of this stillness is often one of intense discomfort, as the mind frantically searches for something to latch onto. You will feel the urge to check, to scroll, and to consume rising up within you like a physical hunger, a symptom of the deep addiction we have developed to the constant shimmer of the screen. This is the withdrawal phase of the digital desert, the moment when the false self begins to panic because it is no longer being fed. Staying in the zone of silence despite this discomfort is the act of spiritual warfare that leads to true freedom. As you persist in the silence, the internal noise eventually begins to subside, giving way to a clarity that is impossible to find in the digital world. You start to notice the subtle movements of your own thoughts, the way a memory surfaces or an idea begins to take shape in the quiet. This is the return of the mental buffer, the restoration of the space where you can actually process your life instead of just surviving it. You discover that the boredom you feared is actually the gateway to a deeper level of creativity and insight. When the mind is no longer being force-fed the images of others, it begins to generate its own images, drawn from the wellspring of your unique experience. The practice of Hesychia reveals that much of our digital activity is a form of flight, a way to escape the weight of our own existence. We use the noise of the world to drown out the questions that only silence can answer, questions about our purpose, our values, and the state of our souls. By embracing the zones of silence and the rules of the thresholds, you are stopping the flight and turning to face yourself. This is the most difficult work a human being can do, which is why the digital world offers so many ways to avoid it. But it is also the only work that leads to a life of meaning and a focus that is truly your own. The stillness of Hesychia is not a static state, but a dynamic and athletic engagement with the present moment. It requires a constant, gentle effort to return to the center every time the mind begins to wander back toward the digital horizon. It is like the work of a gardener who must constantly pull the weeds of distraction to allow the flowers of focus to bloom. Each time you choose to remain in the silence instead of reaching for a device, you are strengthening the neural pathways of attention and weakening the grip of the algorithm. You are building a mental resilience that will allow you to move through the world with a sense of peace and purpose that no notification can disturb. This inner stillness eventually begins to radiate outward, affecting the way you interact with every aspect of your life. You find that you are more present in your work, more attentive in your relationships, and more aware of the beauty of the world around you. The frantic, fragmented energy of the digital user is replaced by the steady, focused energy of the Hesychast. You are no longer a victim of the attention economy, but a master of your own consciousness, capable of choosing where and how you will direct your life force. The silence is no longer a void to be feared, but a treasure to be guarded with the same intensity that a monk guards his cell. The rule of the first and last hours, combined with the creation of zones of silence, forms a new rhythm for your life that is aligned with the needs of the soul. It is a structure that protects you from the predatory precision of the machine and provides the space necessary for genuine growth. This is not about total abstinence from technology, but about establishing a hierarchy where the human spirit is always at the top. You are reclaiming the right to be silent, the right to be alone, and the right to be unreachable in a world that demands constant connectivity. You are building a digital monastery in the midst of the chaos, a place where the light of focus can burn steadily and bright. As you inhabit these spaces of stillness, you will notice a shift in the quality of your own thoughts. They become less reactive, less fragmented, and more deeply rooted in the reality of your own being. You are moving from the surface of the water, where the waves are constant and chaotic, to the depths of the ocean, where the water is still and the pressure is immense. In these depths, you can hear the whisper of your own calling and the quiet movements of the divine. The digital desert has done its work, stripping away the unnecessary and leaving only the essential. The silence of Hesychia is the ultimate counterculture in an age of noise, a radical assertion of the value of the interior life. It is a path that few choose to walk, for it requires a level of discipline and honesty that the modern world does not encourage. But for those who are willing to endure the initial discomfort of the withdrawal, the rewards are beyond measure. You are rediscovering what it means to be human in a world that wants to turn you into a data point. You are reclaiming your focus, your time, and your soul from the hands of those who wish to harvest them for profit. The journey into stillness is a journey back to the self, a return to the home you didn't realize you had left. It is a process of remembering who you are when you are not being watched, liked, or followed. The zones of silence and the sacred thresholds are the tools you use to build this home, one quiet minute at a time. Each breath taken in the absence of a screen is a victory for your humanity and a defeat for the algorithm. You are no longer a nomad wandering in the digital wilderness. You are a resident of the silence, a practitioner of the great cessation. This stillness is the foundation upon which the rest of your life will be built, a sturdy and unmoving center in a world that is constantly shifting. It is the place where you gather the strength to face the challenges of reality without being overwhelmed by them. When you are rooted in Hesychia, the noise of the world can still reach your ears, but it can no longer penetrate your heart. You have found the inner stillness that the Desert Fathers sought, a peace that surpasses understanding and a focus that cannot be broken. The gate is closed, the sentry is at his post, and the fire of your attention is burning with a clear and steady flame. The mental buffer is now restored, providing you with the space you need to act with wisdom and compassion in every situation. You are no longer a slave to your impulses or the victim of every passing digital trend. You have the freedom to choose your responses and the clarity to see the path ahead. The stillness has become your greatest asset, a source of power and resilience that no machine can replicate. You are a digital monk, living in the world but not of it, guarding the sanctuary of your mind with the same devotion as the saints of the Ceres. As you move through the day, you carry this silence within you like a hidden treasure, a secret well that you can draw from whenever the world becomes too loud. You have learned the art of being present in the gap, finding the beauty in the waiting and the wisdom in the pause. The elevator ride and the checkout line are no longer voids to be filled, but opportunities to return to the breath and the center. You are fully awake, fully aware, and fully alive in a way that was impossible when you were plugged into the grid. The silence has become your home, and you are finally, truly at rest. The power of this stillness is that it cannot be taken from you, for it is not dependent on external circumstances. It is a state of being that you carry with you, a portable desert that you can enter at any moment. Even in the midst of a crowded city or a frantic workplace, the Hesychast remains in his cell, centered in the quiet of his own heart. This is the ultimate reclamation of focus, a sovereignty that is absolute and unassailable. You have navigated the digital desert and found the oasis of the self, a place of cool water and deep shade that will never run dry. The practice of Hesychia is the final preparation for the integration of the mind and the body, the moment when the stillness of the spirit begins to manifest in the movements of the flesh. You have cleared the internal landscape and established the boundaries of time and space, creating the conditions necessary for a new way of living. The next phase of the journey will take you deeper into the physical reality of your existence, grounding your newfound focus in the tangible work of your hands. The silence you have found will now become the rhythm of your labor, the steady pulse that guides every action and every word. You are ready to step out of the cell and into the world, carrying the stillness of the desert within you as you begin the work of building a life that is truly, vibrantly, and focusedly your own. The stillness of the interior life is a fragile flame that can be extinguished by the slightest breeze of physical restlessness if the body is not given its own vocation. The Desert Fathers understood that the human person is not a ghost inhabiting a machine, but a profound unity of spirit and flesh that must move in harmony to achieve true focus. They recognized that a mind attempting to soar into the heights of contemplation, while the body sits in stagnant idleness, is a mind destined for a fall. To prevent this, they developed a theology of work that had nothing to do with economic production and everything to do with the preservation of the soul. They wove baskets from palm fronds and twisted ropes from flax, not because the world needed more baskets, but because their attention needed an anchor. In the digital era, we have become a generation of floating heads, drifting through a shimmering void where nothing has weight, texture, or resistance. We spend our days interacting with light and pixels, engaging in a form of existence that is fundamentally disembodied and abstract. This lack of physical grounding leaves the mind in a state of chronic vertigo, spinning through an infinite expanse of data without ever touching the earth. We have outsourced our physical labor to machines and our physical presence to avatars, leaving the beast of the body with nothing to do but twitch with nervous energy. This disembodiment is the secret source of our digital anxiety, a biological protest against a life that has been stripped of its sensory richness. The monk in his cell knew that if his hands were idle, his mind would soon become a playground for the wandering thoughts of the midday devil. By engaging in repetitive, rhythmic manual labor, he provided the body with a task that occupied its lower functions, allowing the higher faculties of the mind to remain fixed on the center. The weaving of a basket was a physical prayer, a way of stitching the attention into the very fabric of reality through the movement of the fingers. There is a profound psychological safety in the tangible, a sense of security that comes from handling materials that do not change at the speed of a refresh rate. When you work with your hands, you are forced to move at the pace of the material world, a pace that is naturally aligned with the rhythms of the human heart. The screen offers us a world without friction, where every desire is met with the instant gratification of a click or a swipe. This lack of resistance atrophies the will and creates a mind that is incapable of sustained effort or patient endurance. Manual labor restores this necessary friction, presenting us with the stubborn reality of wood that will not bend or soil, that must be turned with effort. In the struggle with the material world, we rediscover our own limits and our own strength, grounding our identity in something more substantial than a profile or a feed. The resistance of the physical world is a mercy that prevents us from disappearing into the delusions of the digital self. We must recognize that our current state of focus is being undermined by a sensory deprivation that we mistake for a sensory overload. While our eyes and ears are bombarded with information, our senses of touch, smell, and proprioception are starving for engagement. We have forgotten the weight of a tool in the hand, the scent of fresh-cut cedar, or the cooling sensation of damp earth between the fingers. This sensory starvation creates a hollow space within the psyche that we attempt to fill with more digital noise, never realizing that the hunger is for the world we have abandoned. To reclaim your focus, you must return to the sacrament of the tangible, re-engaging with the physical world through the deliberate work of your hands. The desert monks did not see their labor as a distraction from their spiritual life, but as the very foundation of it. They understood that the mind cannot be still if the body is not grounded, and that the hands are the primary instruments through which we inhabit the present moment. When you are carving a piece of wood or planting a garden, you cannot be in the digital void. You must be exactly where your hands are. This synchronization of mind and body is the essence of true focus, a state of being where the self is no longer divided against itself. By giving the body a meaningful task, you are providing a container for your attention, allowing it to pool and deepen rather than evaporating into the ether. The actionable step toward this grounding is the implementation of a tactile hobby that requires the use of both hands and the absolute absence of screens for at least 30 minutes every day. This is not a leisure activity in the modern sense, but a rigorous practice of digital asceticism designed to rehabituate your brain to the physical world. You must choose a task that has a clear beginning, a middle, and an end, and that results in a physical object or a tangible change in your environment. Whether it is woodworking, knitting, gardening, or the restoration of a mechanical device, the work must demand your full physical presence and a high degree of hand-eye coordination. This daily half-hour is a non-negotiable ritual of incarnation, a way of pulling your soul back into your skin. During this time, the phone must not merely be silent. It must be entirely absent from the room, ensuring that the bridge to the digital void is completely severed. You are entering a space where the only feedback you receive comes from the materials you are handling and the skill of your own movements. You will find that the initial minutes of this practice are often characterized by a frantic mental chatter, as the mind struggles to adjust to the slow pace of physical labor. This is the sound of the digital self protesting its own displacement, a sign that the medicine of the tangible is beginning to work. As you continue to move your hands, the chatter will eventually subside, replaced by a quiet, rhythmic focus that is both calm and alert. The choice of a tactile hobby is a declaration of independence from the attention economy, a way of asserting that your time is worth more than the data you can generate. In the digital world, your labor is invisible and its products are ephemeral, serving only to enrich the platforms that harvest your focus. In the physical world, your labor leaves a mark that you can see, touch, and hold, providing a sense of agency and accomplishment that no digital achievement can match. You are building something real in a world that is becoming increasingly fake, and in doing so, you are rebuilding the shattered fragments of your own concentration. The finished object is a testament to your ability to stay present, a physical anchor that holds you in the reality of your own life. We must also understand that the goal of this labor is not perfection, but the process of engagement itself. The desert monk did not care if his basket was a masterpiece. He cared that he was weaving while he prayed, keeping the beast of the body occupied so the spirit could find its way home. If your woodwork is rough or your garden is messy, it does not matter as much as the fact that you spent 30 minutes in the heat of the struggle with the material. The value lies in the friction, the effort, and the sustained attention required to see the task through to its conclusion. You are training your mind to endure the slow and the difficult, building a resilience that will serve you in every area of your life. The modern world views manual labor as a chore to be avoided or an inefficiency to be optimized away through technology. This perspective fails to see that the effort required by physical tasks is precisely what makes them so transformative for the human psyche. When we eliminate the need for physical engagement, we also eliminate the primary way that we ground ourselves in the present. We become like leaves blown by the wind of every digital trend, lacking the root system that only comes from a deep connection to the earth and the work of our hands. By intentionally reintroducing manual labor into your life, you are planting yourself firmly in the soil of reality, where the digital storms cannot move you. Consider the neurological impact of complex manual tasks, which engage vast areas of the brain that remain dormant during the act of scrolling. The hands are connected to the mind through an intricate web of neural pathways that are essential for the development of cognitive function and emotional regulation. When you use your hands to create or repair, you are stimulating the parts of your brain responsible for problem solving, spatial awareness, and fine motor control. This holistic engagement creates a state of mental health that is impossible to achieve through passive consumption. You are not just making an object, you are literally rewiring your brain for focus and stability. The disembodiment of digital life also leads to a profound sense of alienation from our own physical needs and rhythms. We ignore the strain in our necks, the dryness in our eyes, and the shallow nature of our breath as we disappear into the screen. Manual labor forces us to listen to the body once again, as the muscles tire and the breath deepens in response to the effort. This return to the body is a return to sanity, a way of recognizing our own humanity in a world that wants to treat us as biological processors. When you are physically tired from honest work, the sleep that follows is deep and restorative, free from the blue light-induced restlessness of the digital user. The practice of a tactile hobby also provides a necessary outlet for the creative energy that is often suppressed by the standardized formats of social media. On a screen, your creativity is limited by the tools and templates provided by the platform, forcing your expression into a predefined box. In the workshop or the garden, you are limited only by the laws of physics and the extent of your own imagination. This freedom to experiment and fail in the physical world is essential for the growth of the soul. It fosters a sense of play and curiosity that is often lost in the high-stakes, performative environment of the internet. We must also recognize the communal aspect of manual labor, which has historically been a way for people to connect through shared work and the exchange of skills. The desert monks often worked in proximity to one another, their hands busy while their hearts remained in silence. In our era, the tactile hobby can be a way to reconnect with others in a physical space, moving beyond the superficial interactions of the comment section. Whether it is learning a craft from a mentor or working on a project with a friend, the shared experience of physical labor creates a bond that is deeper and more resilient than any digital connection. It is a return to the human scale of relationship, grounded in the reality of shared effort and mutual respect. The 30 minutes of daily tactile labor act as a psychological reset, clearing away the mental clutter that accumulates during the hours spent in the digital void. It is a form of active meditation that bypasses the intellectual mind and speaks directly to the deeper layers of the psyche. You will find that the problems that seemed insurmountable while you were staring at a screen often find their own solutions while you are focused on a physical task. The movement of the hands unlocks the stagnation of the mind, allowing ideas to flow and perspective to return. This is the magic of the tangible, a power that the digital world can mimic but never truly possess. The resistance you feel toward starting this practice is a measure of how much the digital world has colonized your sense of self. The noonday devil will whisper that you are too busy, that the work is beneath you, or that you could be doing something more productive with your time. You must recognize these thoughts as the last gasps of the addicted mind, trying to pull you back into the comfort of the screen. The truth is that there is nothing more productive you can do for your soul than to spend 30 minutes a day being fully present in your own body. This labor is the price of your freedom, a small sacrifice of convenience in exchange for the reclamation of your life. As you become more proficient in your chosen craft, you will begin to experience the state of flow, where the boundaries between the self and the task seem to disappear. This is the secular equivalent of the monk's contemplation, a moment of pure, undistracted presence that is the ultimate goal of the digital ascetic. In this state, time is no longer a resource to be managed, but a medium in which you are fully immersed. The anxiety of the future and the regrets of the past fall away, leaving only the perfect, luminous clarity of the work at hand. This is the reward for your endurance, a taste of the peace that lies beyond the noise of the marketplace. The physical objects you create during this time will become the icons of your new way of life, reminders of the strength and the focus you have reclaimed. A hand-carved spoon, a knitted scarf, or a well-tended garden are not just things, They are the external manifestations of an internal transformation. They stand as a silent protest against the ephemeral, disposable nature of the digital world, asserting the value of the slow, the permanent, and the real. Every time you see or use these objects, you are reminded of your capacity to inhabit the present moment and to shape the world with your own hands. You are no longer a consumer of other people's realities. You are the architect of your own. This grounding in the body is the necessary counterpart to the watchfulness of the mind, creating a balanced and resilient foundation for the spiritual life. The Desert Fathers knew that the spirit cannot fly if the body is not anchored, and that the mind cannot be still if the hands are not occupied. By embracing the discipline of manual labor, you are following in the footsteps of those who knew that the path to heaven begins with the feet firmly planted on the earth. You are reclaiming the fullness of your humanity, integrating the mind and the body into a single, focused instrument of purpose. The digital desert is being transformed into a garden, one deliberate movement of the hands at a time. As you move through your 30 minutes of labor, notice the way your perception of time begins to shift. The frantic, fragmented seconds of the digital world are replaced by the long, steady hours of the material world. You begin to appreciate the time it takes for a seed to sprout, for glue to dry, or for a blade to become sharp. This patience is a form of spiritual maturity, a recognition that the most important things in life cannot be rushed or optimized. You are learning to live at the pace of reality, a pace that allows for depth, reflection, and the slow ripening of the soul. The beast of the body, once tamed by the rhythm of labor, becomes a powerful ally in your quest for focus. Instead of being a source of distraction and restlessness, the body becomes a steady anchor that holds you in the present moment. You find that you can carry the grounding of your tactile hobby into the rest of your day, maintaining a sense of physical presence even when you are engaged in intellectual work. The hands remember the weight of the tool and the texture of the material, providing a subconscious signal to the mind that it is safe to remain focused and still. You are no device-bound ghost, but a creature of flesh and blood, rooted in the world and master of your own attention. The discipline of manual labor is the final step in the process of reclaiming your focus from the digital void. It is the moment when the abstract principles of asceticism become a lived, physical reality. You are no longer just thinking about focus. You are practicing it with every movement of your muscles and every beat of your heart. The digital world has lost its power to disembody you, for you have found a home in the tangible reality of your own work. The cell of the monk has expanded to include the workshop and the garden, places where the silence of the spirit is expressed through the labor of the hands. This grounding provides the stability needed to face the next stage of the journey, where the focus moves from the work of the hands to the work of the tongue. You have learned to be still in your cell and to be present in your body, and now you must learn to be silent in a world that demands your opinion on everything. The power you have found in the physical world will be your strength as you navigate the treacherous waters of digital expression. You are ready to move deeper into the mystery of silence, reclaiming your speech from the cacophony of the comment section. The hands have done their work, and now the heart must learn to hold its peace. The physical labor of the hands provides a sturdy foundation for the soul, but there is a second, more porous gate that must be guarded with even greater intensity. The Desert Fathers believed that the most significant leakage of spiritual energy occurred through the tongue, an organ they considered to be a small spark capable of setting an entire forest ablaze. They understood that every word spoken without necessity was a dissipation of the internal heat required for the transformation of the mind. In our era, the tongue has been extended by the fiber optic cable and the touchscreen, allowing us to speak to thousands with a single flick of the thumb. This digital speech is not a tool of communication so much as a siphon that drains the focus from our interior life and scatters it across the barren landscape of the internet. To reclaim your focus, you must confront the mystery of silence, a practice that the monks valued above almost all other ascetic disciplines. They did not remain quiet because they had nothing to say, but because they understood that the constant urge to express oneself is a symptom of a fragmented spirit. When we feel the need to comment, to react, or to share our opinion on the latest outrage, we are essentially leaking our life force into a void that can never be filled. The digital world thrives on this constant outpouring of expression, turning our thoughts into commodities that are harvested to keep the machine running. By choosing silence, you are performing a radical act of reclamation, holding your energy within yourself so that it can be used for the deep work of focus. The monks often took vows of silence for years at a time, recognizing that much speaking prevents the mind from ever reaching a state of true stillness. They believed that the soul has a limited amount of energy, and that every time we engage in trivial talk, we are wasting the fuel needed for the journey into the interior. In the modern context, this trivial talk has been codified into the comment section, the thread, and the status update, creating a culture of perpetual chatter. We are under a constant, invisible pressure to have an opinion on everything instantly, as if our silence were a sign of complicity or ignorance. This pressure is a trap designed to keep the mind in a state of high-alert reactivity, preventing the emergence of a more profound and considered wisdom. This constant need to weigh in on the affairs of the world creates what the Fathers called the performative self, a version of the identity that exists only to be perceived by others. When you post your dinner, your workout, or your indignation, you are no longer living those experiences for yourself. You are staging them for an audience. This performative mode is the enemy of deep focus because it requires you to constantly step outside of your own life to see how it looks to an observer. Your attention is split between the act itself and the digital record of the act, leaving you in a state of chronic self-consciousness. To find your focus again, you must learn to live the hidden life, where your experiences are yours alone and do not need the validation of a like button to be real. The algorithm exploits our primal need for social recognition, turning the act of expression into a dopamine-driven feedback loop. Every time we speak into the digital void and receive a response, we feel a momentary surge of significance that masks the underlying emptiness of the interaction. This creates a psychological dependency on the reaction of others, making us terrified of the silence that follows an unshared thought. We have become like actors who cannot stop performing even when the theater is empty, terrified that if we stop speaking, we will cease to exist. Reclaiming your speech from the comment section is about rediscovering the inherent value of your own existence, independent of the digital crowd. The theology of silence suggests that the most important truths are those that cannot be spoken, but can only be experienced in the quiet of the heart. When we attempt to translate every internal movement into a digital post, we are inevitably flattening the complexity of our own souls. The digital medium demands brevity, clarity, and impact, forcing us to reduce our deepest insights into slogans and soundbites. This process of translation is a form of spiritual violence, stripping away the nuances and the shadows that make our thoughts truly our own. By refusing to express every thought, you are preserving the mystery of your interior life, allowing it to grow in directions that the algorithm can never predict or control. The monks had a saying that if a man cannot sit in silence, he cannot know himself, and if he does not know himself, he cannot know the world. The constant chatter of the digital marketplace is a shield that we use to protect ourselves from the terrifying reality of our own internal silence. We reach for the comment section because we are afraid of what we might hear if we were truly quiet for a single hour. The digital noise provides a sense of belonging and purpose that is ultimately a mirage, a distraction from the hard work of building an internal foundation. Silence is the only place where the false self can be stripped away, revealing the sturdy and unmoving core of the person you were meant to be. The practice of fasting from expression is a deliberate choice to starve the performative self so that the authentic self can finally breathe. It requires a ruthless pruning of the habit of documentation, a refusal to turn your life into a series of exhibits for public consumption. You do not have to post your dinner to enjoy the meal, and you do not have to post your outrage to be a person of conscience. In fact, the monks believed that virtue practiced in secret was far more powerful than virtue practiced in the sight of men. By keeping your experiences hidden, you are allowing them to take root in your heart, where they can become a source of lasting strength rather than a fleeting digital signal. This fasting is not about becoming a hermit or withdrawing from all human communication, but about reclaiming the intentionality of your words. It is about recognizing that your speech is a sacred gift that should not be squandered on the trivialities of the feed. When you stop reacting to everything, You gain the power to respond to the few things that actually matter with a depth and a clarity that was previously impossible. You are no longer a leaf blown about by the winds of viral trends, but a rooted tree that speaks only when it has something worth saying. This economy of speech is the hallmark of a focused mind, a mind that knows the value of its own energy and refuses to let it be stolen. The actionable step for this stage of the journey is the 48-hour comment fast, a period of total cessation from all forms of digital reaction. During these 2 days, you may consume information if you must, but you are strictly forbidden from liking, commenting, sharing, or posting anything of your own. You are becoming a silent observer in the marketplace, watching the frantic activity of others without allowing yourself to be drawn into the fray. This is a diagnostic exercise designed to reveal the internal pressure you feel to be seen and heard by the digital crowd. You will be surprised by how often your thumb moves toward the heart icon or the reply button, driven by an unconscious reflex that has been programmed by years of conditioning. As you observe this pressure, do not judge it, but simply name it as the work of the performative self seeking its fix of validation. Notice the physical sensation of the itch to speak, the way your heart rate increases when you see something you disagree with, or the hollow feeling that arises when you experience something beautiful and cannot share it. This discomfort is the evidence of your addiction, the withdrawal symptoms of a mind that has been trained to live outside of itself. By refusing to scratch the itch, you are beginning to break the circuit of reactivity and re-establishing the sovereignty of your own attention. You are learning to sit with your thoughts and feelings without the need to broadcast them to a faceless audience. The 48-hour comment fast is a laboratory for the soul, a space where you can study the mechanics of your own vanity and insecurity. You will find that the world does not stop spinning because you have stopped commenting, and that the events of the day do not lose their significance because you have not weighed in on them. This realization is both humbling and incredibly liberating, as it strips away the illusion of your own digital importance. You are discovering that the vast majority of what we call communication on the internet is actually just a form of noise, a collective screaming into the void that achieves nothing but the exhaustion of the participants. In the silence, you find a peace that the loudest thread can never provide. The desert monks knew that the tongue is the last part of the human person to be tamed, and that the struggle for silence is a lifelong battle. They used various techniques to guard their speech, such as carrying a stone in their mouth or retreating into the deep desert where there was no one to talk to. Our digital stone is the 48-hour fast, a temporary barrier that forces us to confront the reality of our internal chatter. When you are forbidden from speaking externally, you are forced to listen to the internal monologue that usually goes unnoticed beneath the noise of the feed. You will see how much of your mental energy is spent preparing arguments, seeking approval, and constructing a version of yourself that does not exist. This internal audit is the true purpose of the fast, a way to clear the psychological clutter that prevents deep thought from taking root. When you are no longer focused on how to express your thoughts to others, you can finally begin to think for yourself. You will find that your ideas become more complex, your emotions more nuanced, and your focus more resilient as you stop dissipating your energy through the tongue. The silence acts as a greenhouse for the mind, providing the warmth and the stillness needed for the seeds of wisdom to sprout. You are reclaiming the primary resource of your life, the ability to inhabit your own consciousness without the need for an audience. During the fast, you may feel a sense of loneliness or isolation, a feeling that you have been forgotten by the world. This is a normal part of the process, a sign that your sense of worth has become dangerously dependent on digital connectivity. The Desert Fathers believed that this loneliness was the threshold of the sacred, the necessary gateway to a deeper connection with the self and the divine. By enduring the silence, you are learning that you are enough for yourself, and that your value is not a product of your digital footprint. You are rediscovering the dignity of the person who can stand alone in the presence of their own truth, without the need for a single like or share. The 48-hour fast also reveals the incredible amount of time and energy we waste on things that have no actual impact on our physical reality. You will see how much of your day was previously consumed by the demands of the comment section, and how much mental space was occupied by the opinions of people you will never meet. This reclaimed energy can now be directed toward the things that truly matter: your work, your relationships, and your own interior growth. You are becoming a more substantial person, a person of weight and depth who is no longer easily moved by the trivialities of the digital world. The silence is not a lack of life, but a concentration of it. As you emerge from the fast, the goal is not to return to your previous habits, but to carry the spirit of the silence into every digital interaction. You will find that you are more selective with your words, more patient with your reactions, and less concerned with the validation of the crowd. You have learned that you do not have to speak to be real, and that your silence is often more powerful than your speech. This is the beginning of a new way of being in the world, a way that is defined by a holy detachment from the demands of the algorithm. You are no longer a performer in the digital theater, but a witness to the reality of your own life. The monks believed that the man who has mastered his tongue has mastered his entire body, and the same is true of the digital ascetic. By taming the urge to comment and react, you are gaining a level of self-control that will serve you in every area of your life. You are building a mental fortress that is resistant to the predatory precision of the machine, a sanctuary where your focus can remain fixed on the monumental. The mystery of silence is the key to this fortress, a practice that protects the soul from the dissipation of the marketplace. You are reclaiming your voice by learning when to hold your peace, ensuring that when you do speak, your words carry the weight of a focused and integrated spirit. The digital world will continue to scream for your attention, but you will no longer feel the need to scream back. You have found a different kind of power, a power that comes from the ability to remain still in the midst of the storm. This is the peace of the desert, a peace that is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of a centered and unwavering focus. You are a digital monk, walking through the noise with a heart that is fixed on the silence, a mind that is no longer for sale. The comment section has lost its grip on your soul, for you have discovered the profound dignity of the hidden life. The 48-hour fast is merely the beginning of a lifelong discipline of linguistic asceticism. You will find that the more you practice silence, the more you crave it, and the more you realize how much of our modern world is built on a foundation of empty noise. This realization will lead you to simplify your digital life even further, removing the sources of chatter and distraction that no longer serve your purpose. You are clearing the path for a deeper and more meaningful engagement with reality, an engagement that is grounded in the stillness of the heart. The desert is no longer a place of deprivation, but a place of abundance, where the soul can finally find the nourishment it has been starving for. The silence you have reclaimed will become the medium through which you experience the world, a lens that brings the essential into sharp focus. You will see the beauty in the mundane, the wisdom in the quiet, and the depth in the relationships that are not mediated by a screen. Your focus is no longer a fragmented resource to be harvested, but a unified force that flows from the center of your being. You have taken back your speech from the marketplace, and in doing so, you have taken back your life. The mystery of silence has revealed the truth of who you are, a truth that no algorithm can ever capture or quantify. As you move forward, remember that every moment of silence is a victory for your soul, a small act of rebellion against the machine. The pressure to speak will return, but you will meet it with the strength of the sentry who knows the value of the treasure he guards. You are the master of the threshold, the one who decides which thoughts are worthy of being spoken and which should remain in the sacred quiet of the heart. The digital world has no power over the person who has learned to love the silence, for they have found a source of validation that the world cannot give and cannot take away. You are grounded, you are watchful, and you are finally, profoundly silent. The silence of the tongue is the necessary precursor to the stability of the heart, a state where the internal movements of the soul are no longer dictated by external events. When you are quiet, you can finally hear the steady pulse of your own purpose, a purpose that has been drowned out by the roar of the marketplace. You are moving closer to the heart of the desert, where the only voice that matters is the one that speaks in the stillness. This is the path of the digital monk, a journey of transformation that begins with the closing of the mouth and the opening of the spirit. The focus you have reclaimed is the light that will guide you through the darkness, a flame that burns with a clear and steady intensity. The 48-hour fast has shown you that the world can wait, and that your opinion is not the fuel that keeps the universe in motion. This humility is the foundation of a true and lasting focus, a focus that is not driven by ego or the need for recognition. You are free to engage with the world on your own terms, with a voice that is seasoned by the silence and a mind that is anchored in the truth. The comment section is behind you, a distant echo of a life you no longer live, and ahead of you lies the vast and luminous expanse of the interior desert. You are ready for the next stage of the journey, where the stillness of the heart meets the stability of the place. The Desert Fathers believed that the greatest threat to the soul was not the presence of a demon, but the simple act of moving too much. They understood that the mind is like a vessel of water that can only settle and become clear when it is left in one place for a long duration. This gave birth to the radical concept of stabilitas loci, or stability of place, a vow that bound the monk to a single monastery or a single cell for the duration of his life. In an age of total mobility, this sounds like a self-imposed prison, but to the ascetic, it was the only way to ensure that the internal landscape was not constantly being rearranged by the external scenery. To stay in one place is to force the mind to stop searching for salvation in the next horizon and to begin looking for it in the present moment. Our modern digital existence is the antithesis of this stability, characterized instead by a frantic and perpetual nomadism. We are digital wanderers, moving from one app to another and from one tab to the next with a frequency that borders on the pathological. This constant context switching is the mental equivalent of running through 20 different buildings in a single minute, never stopping long enough to understand the purpose of any of them. We believe we are being productive or staying informed, but in reality, we are merely scattering our cognitive resources across 1,000 different thresholds. Each jump from one task to another leaves behind a residue of attention, a phenomenon known as attention residue that ensures we are never fully present in anything we do. When you have 20 tabs open in your browser, you are inhabiting 20 different realities simultaneously, and your brain is struggling to maintain a coherent sense of self across all of them. This fragmentation is a direct assault on your focus, as the mind is forced to constantly recalibrate its expectations and its energy levels. The energy required to switch contexts is energy that is being stolen from the work itself, leaving you exhausted and depleted before you have even begun to make progress. The digital nomad is a person who is everywhere at once and therefore nowhere at all, lost in a shimmering fog of potentiality that never solidifies into actual accomplishment. Stability of place is the only cure for this vertigo, a deliberate anchoring of the self in a single task and a single environment. The monk's cell was not just a room. It was a physical manifestation of his commitment to the present. Within those four walls, there was no escape from the reality of his own thoughts and the demands of his vocation. By removing the possibility of movement, the monk removed the primary distraction that keeps us from confronting the depth of our own existence. We use our digital mobility as a way to flee from the discomfort of a difficult problem or a boring moment, jumping to a new tab the second we feel the slightest bit of friction. This habit of flight ensures that we never develop the mental stamina required for deep work, as we are always taking the path of least resistance into a new context. To reclaim your focus, you must implement your own version of stabilitas loci within your digital workspace. This begins with the recognition that your environment dictates your mental architecture, and a cluttered, multitasking environment will inevitably produce a cluttered, multitasking mind. You must transform your relationship with your devices from one of wandering to one of dwelling. When you open a laptop to write, that laptop must become a typewriter and nothing else. The library of the internet must be locked away behind a wall of digital discipline. By limiting the functionality of your tools to the task at hand, you are creating a monastic cell in the middle of the digital wilderness, a place where the noonday devil of distraction cannot reach you. The practice of single tasking is a form of spiritual devotion, a way of honoring the work by giving it the totality of your attention. In the monastic tradition, every action was performed with a sense of liturgical gravity, whether it was chanting psalms or scrubbing floors. When you commit to a single task without the possibility of switching, you are elevating that task from a mere chore to a sacred engagement with reality. You are saying that this moment and this work are enough, and that you do not need the constant stimulation of a dozen other tabs to feel alive. This stability creates a profound sense of peace, as the mind is no longer being pulled in a dozen different directions by the predatory algorithms of the attention economy. The cognitive cost of context switching is not a minor inconvenience. It is a structural failure of the modern intellect. Every time you check an email while working on a report, or glance at a notification while reading a book, you are resetting the clock on your deep focus. It takes the human brain an average of 23 minutes to return to a state of flow after a single interruption, which means that most of us are living in a state of permanent cognitive impairment. We are trying to build cathedrals of thought while our hands are constantly being pulled away to pick up pebbles. Stability of place requires you to stop the bleeding of your attention by closing the doors to every context except the one you are currently inhabiting. The monastic workspace is a physical and digital environment designed to protect the sanctity of your focus. It is a space where the tools are specific, the boundaries are clear, and the temptations are removed before they can even manifest. This means that if you are working on a computer, you must have a ruthless policy regarding open tabs and background applications. If the task is writing, the only window allowed to exist is the word processor. If the task is research, the only tabs allowed are those directly related to the topic. You are creating a digital enclosure, a space where your mind can settle into the work without the constant threat of being kidnapped by a stray link or an unrelated thought. This practice extends to the physical devices themselves, moving toward a philosophy of the unitary device. In the same way a monk has a specific place for prayer and a specific place for labor, you should consider assigning specific purposes to your different devices. Use one tablet exclusively for reading, a laptop exclusively for deep work, and perhaps a desktop for the administrative tasks of life. When you pick up a specific device, your brain receives a powerful environmental cue that it is time to inhabit a specific mental context. This prevents the cross-contamination of focus, where the urge to check social media bleeds into the time you have set aside for serious reflection. Stability of place also requires you to confront the illusion of the digital nomad lifestyle, which suggests that we can be productive from anywhere at any time. The truth is that the human mind craves consistency and routine to reach its highest levels of performance. The monk stayed in his cell because the familiarity of the environment allowed his internal life to become the primary focus. When you work in a different coffee shop every day or change your desk setup every week, you are forcing your brain to spend valuable energy processing the new environment. By establishing a fixed, monastic workspace, you are providing your mind with the stability it needs to dive deep into the waters of concentration. This stability is not just about where you are, but about how you look at what is in front of you. The Desert Fathers practiced a form of visual stability, keeping their eyes fixed on their work or the floor to prevent the heart from wandering through the eyes. In the digital world, our eyes are constantly darting across the screen, drawn by the bright colors and sudden movements of the interface. To practice digital stability, you must learn to maintain a steady gaze on the task at hand, refusing to let your eyes wander to the sidebar, the taskbar, or the notification tray. You are training your vision to be a laser rather than a floodlight, concentrating its power on a single point until it breaks through the surface of the mundane. The resistance you feel when you try to stay in one digital place is the sound of your addiction fighting for its life. The mind has become so accustomed to the constant hit of novelty that the stability of a single task feels like a form of sensory deprivation. You will feel an almost physical itch to open a new tab, to check a headline, or to see if anything has changed in the world since you last looked 10 minutes ago. This is the moment of the vow, the point where you must decide to remain in your cell despite the discomfort. If you can endure the first 15 minutes of this stability, the itch will begin to fade, replaced by a deep and luminous engagement with the work that the wanderer can never know. The monastic workspace is a sanctuary of the essential, where every object and every pixel has a reason for being there. It is a space that has been purged of the trivial and the distracting, leaving only the tools needed for the transformation of the mind. When you sit at this desk, you are not just a worker. You are an ascetic engaging in the discipline of attention. You are asserting that your focus is a sacred resource that will not be traded for the cheap coins of the attention economy. The stability of your place becomes the stability of your soul, providing a firm foundation for the building of a life that is focused, purposeful, and free. We must also recognize that the architecture of our software is designed to destroy this stability at every turn. From the red badges of notifications to the infinite scroll of the feed, every element of the modern interface is an invitation to leave where you are and go somewhere else. To maintain stability of place, you must become a digital iconoclast, breaking the images and the systems that seek to move you. This involves disabling every notification, hiding the taskbar, and using full-screen modes that block out the rest of the digital world. You are building a fortress within the machine, a place where the laws of the algorithm do not apply and the only authority is your own will. The vow of stability is a commitment to the depth of the present over the breadth of the possible. We live in an age that worships the possible, offering us an infinite array of choices and contexts at every moment. But the monk knew that the infinite choice is a form of paralysis that prevents us from ever making a single meaningful step. By choosing one place and one task, you are closing the doors to 1,000 other possibilities. But in doing so, you are opening the one door that leads to the heights of human achievement. You are trading the shallow wandering of the nomad for the deep descent of the dweller, finding in the small space of your focus the entire universe of meaning. The actionable path to this stability is the creation of the monastic device protocol. For the next week, you will designate one specific device or one specific user account on your computer for deep work only. This account or device must be stripped of all communication tools, all social media access, and all bookmarks that are not essential to your primary vocation. When you enter this digital cell, you are under a vow of stability. You will not leave the task you have started until the allotted time is finished. You will find that this physical and digital boundary provides a sense of relief, as the burden of constant choice is lifted from your shoulders and you are finally allowed to just be where you are. This protocol is a direct assault on the habit of context switching, forcing your brain to relearn the art of staying put. You will notice that your work becomes more integrated and your thoughts more coherent as you stop the constant jumping between realities. The quality of your output will rise as you are able to bring the full weight of your intelligence to bear on a single point without the leakage of attention residue. You are discovering that the cell is not a prison, but a laboratory of freedom where the mind is finally allowed to reach its full potential. The stability of your place is the key that unlocks the treasury of your own focus. As you inhabit your monastic workspace, you will begin to develop a new relationship with time itself. The frantic, fragmented time of the digital wanderer is replaced by the slow, expansive time of the dweller. You are no longer racing to keep up with the flow of information, but are instead standing still and allowing the information to be processed by the deep layers of your mind. This is the time of the soul, a rhythm that is aligned with the natural movements of thought and the slow ripening of wisdom. You are reclaiming your life from the hands of the clock and placing it back into the hands of the present moment. The stability of place eventually leads to a state of mental quiet that is the prerequisite for all great work. When the mind knows that it is not going anywhere, it stops searching for exits and begins to settle into the task at hand. The internal noise that drives us to switch contexts begins to subside, leaving behind a clear and steady focus that can be maintained for hours. You become like the monk who, after years in his cell, no longer feels the urge to look out the window. You have found in the small space of your work everything you were looking for in the vast expanse of the internet. This practice of digital stabilitas loci is a radical act of rebellion against a culture that demands your constant movement and your total availability. You are asserting that you are not a resource to be moved at the whim of an algorithm, but a sovereign being with the right to stay in one place. By building your monastic workspace and honoring the vow of stability, you are carving out a space for the human spirit in a world that is increasingly dominated by the machine. You are reclaiming your focus, your agency, and your dignity as a creator of meaning. The desert is no longer a place of wandering, but a place of dwelling, where the soul can finally take root and grow. The cell of the monk was the place where he fought his greatest battles and achieved his greatest victories. Your monastic workspace will be the same, a place of confrontation with the self and the discipline of the mind. It is here that you will learn to endure the boredom, the difficulty, and the silence that are the necessary conditions for the birth of something truly great. You are no longer a nomad in the digital wilderness, but a resident of the interior fortress, a dweller in the sanctuary of focus. The stability of your place has become the stability of your life, a firm and unmoving center in a world of constant change. The digital wanderer is always searching for the next thing, but the digital monk has found the one thing that matters. By staying in your cell and refusing to switch contexts, you are choosing the depth of the monumental over the triviality of the fleeting. You are building a life that is grounded in the present, a life that is not scattered by the winds of distraction, but is focused like a beam of light on a single point. This is the power of stabilitas loci, the ancient secret of the desert fathers brought into the heart of the digital age. You have found your place, and in that place, you have found your freedom. The architecture of the monastic workspace is a physical liturgy that reinforces your commitment to focus every time you sit down. The placement of your chair, the lighting of the room, and the absence of the phone are all signs and symbols of your vow. You are not just working, you are inhabiting a space that has been consecrated to the work of the mind. This environmental consistency acts as a powerful anchor for your attention, allowing you to enter a state of deep focus with increasing ease and speed. You are training your brain to recognize the cell as a place of absolute presence, where the noise of the world is not allowed to enter. The context switching that once defined your life is now a distant memory, a chaotic way of being that you have outgrown. You have learned that the ability to stay in one place is the foundation of all other mental disciplines, the essential starting point for the reclamation of the soul. Your monastic workspace is the fortress that protects this newfound stability, a sanctuary where you can grow and create without the fear of interruption. You are no longer a victim of the attention economy, but a master of your own environment, a digital monk who has found his home in the stillness of the work. As you continue to practice stabilitas loci, you will find that the boundaries of your cell begin to expand, encompassing more and more of your life. The stability you have found in your workspace will bleed into your relationships, your leisure, and your rest, providing a sense of groundedness that is visible to all who meet you. You are becoming a person of weight and substance, a person who is not easily moved by the shifting tides of the world. The desert has taught you that the only place worth being is here, and the only time worth having is now. You are rooted, you are focused, and you are finally, profoundly at home. The vow of stability is a lifelong commitment to the depth of your own existence, a promise to yourself that you will not flee from the reality of your own mind. It is a path that requires constant vigilance and a ruthless pruning of the distractions that seek to pull you away from your center. But the reward for this discipline is a life of unparalleled focus and meaning, a life that is no longer scattered and fragmented by the demands of the machine. You have built your monastery in the digital desert, and within its walls, you have found the peace that the world can neither give nor take away. The cell has become your world, and the world has become your cell. The digital nomad is always looking for the next connection, but the digital monk is already connected to the only thing that matters. By staying in your place and honoring your work, you are participating in a tradition of focus that stretches back to the dawn of human consciousness. You are reclaiming the territory of your mind from those who wish to harvest it, and you are building a future that is defined by your own will and your own purpose. The stability of your place is the foundation of your power, the unmoving center from which all your creativity and all your wisdom will flow. You have found your cell, and your cell is teaching you everything you need to know. The work of focus is never finished, but in the stability of your place, you have found the strength to continue. You are no longer afraid of the silence or the difficulty, for you know that they are the gateways to the deeper layers of the self. Your monastic workspace is the laboratory where you are being transformed, one focused hour at a time, into a person of profound and unshakable attention. You are a digital monk, a dweller in the desert of the present, and your focus is a flame that burns with a clear and steady light. The wanderer has finally come home, and the home is the stillness of the work. The stability of place is the final defense against the predatory precision of the algorithm, a wall that cannot be breached by the most sophisticated code. By staying in your cell and refusing to switch contexts, You are asserting your humanity in a world that wants to turn you into a data point. You are a sovereign being, anchored in the reality of your own life and the dignity of your own focus. The digital desert is no longer a place of chaos, but a place of order, a landscape that has been transformed by the power of your own will. You are the architect of your own attention, and the monastery you have built is the testament to your freedom. As you sit in your cell, the noise of the world fades into the background, leaving only the steady pulse of your own thoughts and the quiet movements of your own heart. You are fully present, fully aware, and fully focused on the task at hand, a state of being that is the ultimate goal of the digital ascetic. The stability of your place has become the stability of your soul, providing you with a sense of peace and purpose that no notification can disturb. You have found your center, and from that center, you will change the world. The journey continues, deeper into the stillness, where the only voice you will hear is your own. The stability of place provides the static foundation, but a life lived in the world requires a dynamic framework to survive the return of the noise. The Desert Fathers did not simply sit in the sand. They lived by a regula, a rule of life that functioned as a trellis for the soul. This rule was not a set of restrictive laws, but a structured way of being that protected the monk from the chaos of his own impulses and the demands of the environment. Without a rule, the newfound focus of the desert is quickly dissipated by the friction of daily life, leaving the practitioner as vulnerable as they were before the withdrawal. To build your personal digital monastery, you must draft a rule that governs your relationship with the machine, ensuring that your attention remains your own. A digital rule of life is a conscious commitment to a set of boundaries that define when, where, and how you engage with the internet. It is the transition from a state of reactive consumption to one of intentional usage, where the machine is treated as a tool rather than a master. In the monastery, the day was governed by the horarium, a schedule that assigned every hour to a specific purpose, leaving no room for the accidental or the trivial. Your rule must do the same, creating a temporal architecture that protects your most valuable hours from the encroachment of the algorithm. By defining the limits of your digital engagement, you are creating a space where your focus can grow and flourish without the constant threat of interruption. The first pillar of your rule is the sanctification of time, specifically the establishment of tech-free windows that are absolute and non-negotiable. This goes beyond the first and last hours of the day, extending into the very heart of your productive and social life. You must identify the core tasks of your vocation and protect them with a digital embargo, ensuring that your deepest work is never interrupted by a notification. These windows are the walls of your monastery, providing the enclosure needed for the mind to reach the heights of its potential. When you are within a protected window, the digital world does not exist, and your only responsibility is to the task at hand. The second pillar is the geography of the rule, the designation of physical spaces where the machine is never allowed to enter. We have already discussed the sanctuary of the table and the bedroom, but the rule requires a more comprehensive mapping of your environment. You might decide that your car is a place of silence, or that a specific park bench is a zone of pure reflection. By tethering your digital habits to specific locations, you are utilizing the power of environmental cues to strengthen your resolve. You are teaching your brain that in these sacred spaces, the laws of the algorithm have no jurisdiction, and the soul is finally free to be still. The ultimate goal of this rule is the attainment of Apatheia, a state of holy detachment that was the highest ambition of the Desert Fathers. Apatheia is not a state of cold indifference or the absence of emotion, but a profound equilibrium where the heart is no longer tossed about by the passions of the world. In the digital context, Apatheia means being able to use a tool without being enslaved by it, and seeing a notification without feeling the compulsion to react. It is the ability to walk through the marketplace of the internet without being seduced by its merchants or angered by its provocations. You are in the digital world, but you are no longer of it, for your center is fixed on something far more substantial. This detachment is the fruit of long discipline and the consistent application of your rule, leading to a state of mental sobriety that the world finds incomprehensible. When you achieve Apatheia, the shimmer of the screen loses its hypnotic power, and the outrage of the day becomes a distant and meaningless noise. You can check your email or research a topic with the same clinical precision that a surgeon uses a scalpel, finishing the task and immediately returning to the stillness. You are no longer a victim of the dopamine loop, because your sense of worth and excitement is drawn from the internal reality of your own focus. The machine has been demoted to its proper place as a servant of your purpose, and you have reclaimed your role as the sovereign of your own attention. Integration into the world requires a secondary layer of the rule that governs your social interactions in a landscape of total distraction. We live in a society of the absent, where people are physically present but mentally miles away, tethered to their devices by invisible chains. Your rule must include a commitment to total presence when in the company of others, a radical act of hospitality that honors the humanity of those around you. By refusing to check your phone during a conversation, you are asserting that the person in front of you is more important than the entire digital universe. This presence is a form of love, a way of giving the gift of your undivided attention in a world that is constantly trying to steal it. The advanced application of the rule involves the implementation of the digital Sabbath, a 24-hour period of total disconnection every single week. The Sabbath is not merely a break from work. It is a return to the desert, a deliberate cessation of all digital commerce and communication. It is a day where the grid is powered down and the soul is allowed to wander in the vast, unmediated reality of the physical world. This weekly withdrawal prevents the buildup of digital silt in the psyche, ensuring that the clarity you have worked so hard to achieve is not lost to the slow creep of habit. The Sabbath is the heartbeat of the rule, a recurring reminder that you are a human being and not a component of a network. During the digital Sabbath, the rule of silence and the stability of place reach their highest expression, as you inhabit a world that is completely free from the mediation of a screen. You might find that the first few hours of the Sabbath are marked by a strange anxiety, a phantom limb syndrome where the hand reaches for a device that is not there. This is the final clearing of the mental buffer, the moment when the last residues of the week's noise are allowed to evaporate. As the day progresses, this anxiety is replaced by a profound sense of spaciousness, as if the walls of your life have been pushed back to reveal a much larger horizon. You discover that the world continues to exist without your constant surveillance, and that you are free to exist without the world's constant validation. The Sabbath is the time for the restoration of the senses, a day of intense engagement with the textures, scents, and sounds of the natural world. It is the day for the long walk, the slow meal, and the deep conversation that has no agenda and no time limit. By honoring the Sabbath, you are grounding your rule in the ancient rhythms of the earth, acknowledging that the human soul requires periods of absolute rest to remain healthy. You return to the work week with a perspective that is fresh and unclouded, having spent a day in the presence of the monumental rather than the trivial. The digital Sabbath is the ultimate protection against the burnout and fragmentation that define the modern experience. Advanced practitioners of the rule also develop a protocol for digital fasts that coincide with the seasons of their lives or the needs of their vocation. A fast might last for a week or a month, during which all but the most essential digital tools are set aside to allow for a period of intense focus or spiritual renewal. This is the strategic retreat, the return to the cities when the noise of the city becomes too loud to endure. The digital fast is a way of testing the strength of your Apatheia, ensuring that you have not become subtly dependent on the tools you use. It is a periodic stripping away of the ornaments of the mind, a return to the unfiltered self that is the source of all true wisdom. The rule of life must also address the way you consume information, moving from a model of grazing to a model of deep study. In the monastery, the Lectio Divina was the practice of slow, meditative reading, where a single text was chewed and digested over the course of an entire day. Your rule should replace the frantic skimming of the feed with the deliberate study of primary sources and long-form works that demand sustained attention. By limiting the volume of your intake, you are increasing the quality of your output, ensuring that your mind is fed with the best that has been thought and said. You are becoming a person of depth in a world of shallow surfaces, a person who values wisdom over mere information. This transition requires a ruthless pruning of your digital subscriptions and a total rejection of the news cycle that thrives on manufactured urgency. The Desert Fathers knew that the events of the empire were often mere shadows compared to the internal struggle for the heart. Your rule should limit your exposure to the news to a single, weekly summary, freeing your mind from the constant agitation of the viral and the ephemeral. By stepping out of the stream of the current, you gain the perspective needed to see the underlying patterns of reality. You are no longer a consumer of the latest outrage, but a student of the eternal truths that do not change with the headlines. The rule of life is a living document, a framework that must be constantly refined and adapted as you move through the different stages of your journey. It is not a burden to be carried, but a support that allows you to stand upright in the face of the digital storm. When you find that a part of the rule is no longer serving your focus, you have the authority to change it, always keeping the goal of Apatheia at the center. The rule is your own creation, a reflection of your values and your commitment to the life of the mind. It is the constitution of your personal digital monastery, the law that ensures your freedom in a world of enslavement. Living by a rule requires a level of self-discipline that is rare in the modern age, but the rewards are a clarity and a peace that few will ever know. You are building a life that is integrated and focused, a life where the mind and the body are no longer at war with one another. The rule provides the stability needed for the soul to take root and grow, protecting it from the constant uprooting that occurs in the digital marketplace. You are becoming a person of character, a person whose attention is a sacred gift that is not for sale to the highest bidder. The digital desert has become your home, and the rule is the path that leads you deeper into its mysteries. The social dimension of the rule involves the creation of a community of focus, a small circle of individuals who share your commitment to the interior life. The desert monks were not entirely alone. They lived in clusters of cells, supporting one another in their struggle against the Logismoi and the noonday devil. Your monastery can include friends and family who agree to honor the zones of silence and the rules of the thresholds when they are in your presence. This shared commitment creates a culture of focus that is far more powerful than the efforts of a single individual. You are building an arc of attention in the middle of a digital flood, a place where the human spirit can find refuge and strength. In these communities, the rule of presence becomes the foundation of all interaction, leading to a depth of relationship that is impossible in a world of distraction. You learn to listen with the same intensity that you bring to your deep work, hearing the nuances and the emotions that are lost in the brevity of a text message. You rediscover the joy of the shared silence, the comfort of being in the presence of another without the need for constant digital stimulation. This is the restoration of the human scale of relationship, a return to the intimacy and the vulnerability that make life worth living. Your rule has not isolated you. It has prepared you for a connection that is truly profound. The advanced application of the rule also involves a transformation of your professional life, moving toward a model of work that is defined by quality rather than quantity. You learn to say no to the trivial demands of the digital workplace, protecting your time for the tasks that require your unique intelligence and focus. You become a person who is known for the depth of their insight and the reliability of their presence, rather than the speed of their email responses. This is the professional expression of Apatheia, a state where your work is no longer driven by the fear of missing out or the need for constant visibility. You are working from a center of stillness, and the results are a testament to the power of your discipline. The rule of life eventually becomes so deeply ingrained in your character that it no longer feels like a set of rules at all. It becomes the natural rhythm of your existence, the way you breathe and move through the world with a sense of purpose and peace. You no longer have to struggle to put the phone away or to stay in your cell, for these actions have become the expression of your true self. The digital world has lost its power to provoke or distract you, for you have found something far more beautiful and far more compelling in the silence of your own focus. You are a digital monk, a practitioner of the ancient art of attention in the heart of the modern age. This mastery of the self is the ultimate goal of the desert vocation, a state where the human person is fully integrated and fully alive. You have reclaimed your focus from the predatory precision of the machine, and you have built a life that is a sanctuary of the monumental. The digital desert is no longer a place of deprivation, but a place of intense, focused life, where the soul can finally reach its full stature. You have followed the path of the fathers into the wilderness, and you have returned with a treasure that the world can neither give nor take away. The rule has set you free, and your focus is the light that will guide you for the rest of your days. As you look back on the journey from the noise of the algorithm to the stillness of the rule, you realize that the struggle was not against the machine, but for the soul. The digital world was merely the latest form of the marketplace, a place designed to distract you from the monumental reality of your own existence. By choosing the path of the ascetic, you have reclaimed the primary resource of your life, the ability to decide where your attention is directed. You are no longer a harvestable resource for the highest bidder, but a sovereign being with the power to shape your own destiny. The monastery you have built within yourself is a fortress that will stand against the storms of the future, a place of peace in a world of chaos. The final integration of the rule is the recognition that your focus is not just for yourself, but for the world that so desperately needs it. A person who is truly focused is a person of power, a person who can see clearly and act with wisdom in a time of confusion. Your digital monastery is not a place of escape, but a place of preparation, where you gather the strength and the clarity needed to serve others with a full and undivided heart. By reclaiming your focus, you are becoming a source of stability for those who are still lost in the noise of the algorithm. You are a witness to the possibility of a different way of being, a way that is grounded in the eternal and the monumental. The desert monks believed that the world was sustained by the prayers of those who lived in the silence, and in a similar way, the modern world is sustained by those who can still think deeply and act with intention. Your focus is a contribution to the sanity of the collective, a small but significant weight on the side of the human spirit. Every hour of deep work, every meal eaten in silence, and every Sabbath honored is an act of resistance against the dehumanizing forces of the attention economy. You are part of a secret lineage of the watchful, a community of the focused that stretches across time and space. The rule is the thread that connects you to this lineage, a path that has been walked by the saints and the sages of every age. The architecture of your personal digital monastery is now complete, providing you with the structure and the sanctuary needed to live a life of profound attention. You have identified the twitch, named the Logismoi, and established the rules of the thresholds and the zones of silence. You have grounded your mind in the labor of your hands and your heart in the mystery of the silence. The digital desert has become a place of transformation, a landscape where the false self has been burned away to reveal the sturdy and unmoving core of your true being. You are ready to live as a modern monk, carrying the stillness of the Ceres into the heart of the digital age. The journey does not end here, but moves into a new phase of deepening and refinement as you inhabit the rule and discover its hidden riches. Each day is a new opportunity to practice the art of attention, to guard the gates of the heart, and to remain fixed on the monumental. You will continue to face the temptations of the marketplace and the whispers of the noonday devil, but you will meet them with the strength of a person who has found their home in the silence. The rule is your guide and your protector, a faithful companion on the long and beautiful road toward the integration of the self. Your focus is no longer a fragmented resource, but a clear and steady flame that illuminates the path ahead. The digital world will continue to evolve, offering new distractions and new ways to lose the self in the shimmer of the screen. But you are no longer vulnerable to its charms, for you have built a fortress that is rooted in the ancient wisdom of the desert. You know the value of the gap, the dignity of the silence, and the power of the stability of place. You have reclaimed your time, your focus, and your soul from the hands of the machine, and you have placed them back into the hands of the present moment. You are a digital monk, awake and watchful in the desert of the modern world, a living testament to the endurance of the human spirit. This is the vocation of the elevated within, a call to rise above the trivialities of the age and to face the monumental reality of the interior life. It is a path of rigor and discipline, but it is also a path of unparalleled freedom and joy. By embracing the ascetic practices of the desert, you have found a way to live in the digital world without being consumed by it. You have discovered the peace that lies beyond the noise and the clarity that lies beyond the distraction. The journey is long, but you are not alone. for the silence of the desert is filled with the presence of those who have walked this path before you. The rule of life is the final seal on your transformation, a commitment to the preservation of the soul in a world of total connectivity. It is the structure that turns your focus from a temporary state into a permanent way of being. As you walk out of the desert and back into the world, you carry the stillness of the cell and the weight of the monumental within you. You are a person of the rule, a person of the silence, and a person of the light. The marketplace may scream, the algorithm may pull, and the noonday devil may whisper, but you will remain unmoved, for your focus is anchored in the eternal stillness of the heart. The modern mind is a landscape under siege, yet you have constructed a sanctuary where the predatory precision of the algorithm cannot reach. By implementing the rule of life and embracing the holy detachment of the desert, you have transformed your focus from a harvestable resource into a sovereign power. This is the ultimate reclamation of the self, a journey that begins in the digital desert and ends in the profound integration of a soul that is no longer for sale. If you are ready to defend the monumental against the trivial and join the lineage of the watchful, subscribe to the elevated within, and let us continue building the architecture of the interior life together.